know why I fell in love with soccer? Like the first reason, and I say soccer because I grew up in the United States. And let's be honest, if that word actually offends you coming out of my mouth, I don't know what to tell you. I didn't know it was called anything else until I was 14. That's just the way we speak, which you can make fun of. We are funny. But seriously, the first thing I fell in love with soccer was the idea that everybody around the world played it. That was the first thing. And then I got my first FIFA game. I think it was 08 or 09, something like that. Some in that neighborhood. I would have been like 11, 12. And I realized when I was looking at England, I knew England was supposed to be pretty good, that there was a multi-league setup. I didn't really know what was going on. And these are the sorts of experiences, because I know I can see the analytics. It's kind of creepy, but I can see you. You feel like I can't, because I really am. I'm just kind of in a room talking to myself right now, but I can see you. I can see the analytics. I know where you're from. Down to the IP address and the address. I know where your mom lives. That's for a different reason. Hey, no. Anyways, I know that most of you probably didn't have this experience growing up, right? The same way that I didn't have any experience like this with American football or whatever, right? Like it just always existed. It was always there. I always knew the rules, right? Like that's just the way it was, or basketball or whatever. No, in soccer, promotion and relegation, I didn't even understand what it was for months. I was playing FIFA and I'm like, oh, if you like win the league, you go up. And then all of a sudden, it's not even just the team that wins the league, you go up. And that was the second reason I fell in love with the beautiful game, was this idea that is foreign in American sports. And I love American sports, right? I spent all last night watching them. I'm going to spend all night tonight watching NBA playoffs, NHL playoffs. My Tampa Bay Lightning are down 3-1, which is bullshit. The Florida Panthers are the dirtiest team ever. Okay. But promotion and relegation is great too. There's something special about it. The way it creates drama at both ends of the table instead of just one. The way that it is, in many ways, I feel like America should adopt it, because America is all about this rugged individualism and pull yourself up by the bootstraps and you got to earn literally everything or you starve to death, right? Except for sports. But promotion and relegation is that. You're in the Premier League because you earned it, or somebody before you earned it. The club earned the right to be there. And if you don't earn it, some team named the Tractor Boys, or some team whose stadium is literally in the back of a barbecue restaurant like Luton Town, they're going to take your spot because you didn't earn it. You have to earn it every single year. You have one down year. I'm looking at you, Tottenham. I'm looking at you, Manchester United, and you get unlucky. They had a down year where there were 3 awful teams in the league. But you have a down year when there aren't. You're gone. That's awesome. And as somebody that grows up in a sporting culture where that doesn't exist, the moment you get exposed to that is like huffing, fumes. The story today goes directly against that spirit, though. That's why I wanted to tell you that story, because I have a certain fondness for promotion and relegation that maybe even goes beyond people that grew up with it existing the entire time. And that has been effronteried. That has been thrown aside, tossed asunder. In the women's game in the English third division, there is a team, and this is not the only time this has happened in the history of the football, that has decided to not get promoted. And they hid this from the team. This is probably the most fucked up part of the entire story. They hid this from the team the entire year, that they weren't going to do this. Now, maybe that's because they didn't know whether they were going to do it or not. And I'm sure you're wondering what the fuck happened. And that's where we turn to the BBC and Emma Sanders, who's a women's football news reporter, according to her little tagline here. Right? Wolves players devastated, club didn't apply for promotion. And so obviously, if you're getting promoted from the championship to the Premier League or whatever, you don't have to apply. There isn't anything you have to do, because if you meet the requirements to play in the championship, you meet the requirements to play in the Premier League. That's, boom, you're there. Now, obviously, if you're Luton, maybe you want to expand your stadium, right? There are different things you want to do. But in different leagues, you do see teams run into a situation where even if they get promoted, there are things you have to do to meet the standard of the next league. Like, technically, if you get promoted from the 5th to the 4th tier in England, you have to become fully professional. Now, basically all of the teams that achieve that promotion are already fully professional. But there are all sorts of different requirements. And playing a bunch of Football Manager as I do, you learn a lot of them, right? You have to have a certain stadium size. You can't have a certain type of seating, right? You see clubs all over Europe that have to leave sections of their stadium empty when they play in European competition because European competition doesn't allow standing room only, but their leagues do. Well, in England, you can't have that. So once you get to a certain level, you have to get rid of the standing only or whatever they're actually called sections of the stadium. You have to make those changes. You have to financially invest to make those changes. Now, in women's football, this threshold is a little higher. Okay, because in women's football, they're focused, obviously, the FA is focused on making sure that the game is developed properly, that there are fully professional contracts, that you have this, this number of coaches, right? You have to have all these things listed out to try to grow the game. And Wolverhampton Wanderers has basically decided they don't want to invest in that, which essentially leaves in a sport where merit earns everything, the team stuck in neutral. And it might accidentally end up killing the team in the first place, depending on who you ask. Because they're playing in something called the FA Women's National League. Now, the FA Women's National League, now that's the friggin' Wikipedia page, we don't need that, has this table. This is the Midlands Division. This is the Midlands Division. That's the wrong. We're looking for the Northern Premier Division, right? There's a lot of different divisions. There's Northern and Southern. There's two, right? This is the last non-fully national division in the women's game in England at the third tier. So the top two tiers are fully national. And in the Northern Division, Nottingham Forest won it with 58 points. They played 22 matches. They won 18 of them with 4 draws. Wolverhampton Wanderers went into the final day with an opportunity for promotion. If Nottingham Forest failed to win, which of course they did, they won 17 games with 4 draws, but they lost 1 match. That was it. That was the season. And Wolverhampton Wanderers spent the entire year in a sparkling title race with Nottingham Forest. And they won. Right? They won 17 of their 22 matches, only to come to find out right after the final whistle blew that Wolverhampton Wanderers had never put in the application for promotion. So that even if they had managed to win the league, to try and get up to the women's championship, up to the second division, up to that national level, and being, having this whole thing put in place to try to be a professional women's outfit, it would have never happened. If they had won this title race, they would have never been able to be promoted. And I understand completely the fact that these players were pissed. Midfielder Beth Merrick said, "Imagine fighting for promotion all season to find out our championship bid was never submitted. As a group, we're absolutely devastated to finish the season this way and believe it speaks volumes about the club's ambitions for the women's team." They go on in this story to talk about the fact that they are not given the same resources as some of the other teams that they're going up against in this group, and that they really overachieved expectations to be in this title race in the first place. And they were so motivated to do so because the opportunity that promotion provides is even bigger in the women's game than in the men's in terms of the type of life-changing stuff that it can offer. Sure, you get $100 million if you go from the championship to the Prem, but you're still a team full of highly paid professional players. In the women's game, we're talking about life-changing in an even bigger way. We're talking about a track to being a professional footballer that doesn't exist if you're in the third division of the women's game. And maybe even more importantly than that, there is a belief in football that if you win the league, you go up. Maybe in some of those regional levels, you got to win the league and then win a playoff and go up. But if you are not in the top division and you win a trophy, go up. That's how it works. That's how this sport is designed to work, and it is beautiful that it works that way. And it pisses me off that you would have a women's team and not be willing to go all the way with it. If you don't want to have if you don't want to have a women's team, that's fine. I mean, you should, right? I can't really think of a good reason not to. It is growing explosively. Even if you hate it, you have to acknowledge that it is growing explosively. With the men's game, can't really grow as explosively because everybody already freaking pays attention to it. Well, the women's game is growing explosively. Look at the Women's Euros 16 years ago and then look at the last one. There is an opportunity there. There is money there. There are new fans to be had there. If you have one of the best women's teams, new fans, new people that support your club, there's more explosive growth potential in the women's game. You should have a women's team. Not to mention the fact that, go ahead and support women's players in the first place. Why not? If guys can play, girls should be able to play too. That always makes sense to me. But if you don't want to have one of those teams, that is your right, at least I think, under the way the FA works. But do not have a team and then recruit a bunch of girls, a bunch of women to try to go win under the premise, and they say it later in this freaking story. Wolves have submitted applications for the women's championship in previous seasons, and they lost in the playoff in 2022. They have in previous seasons shown that they filed the paperwork to be a championship club, to be up in the second division. Every single one of these girls is going into this season believing if they can achieve a championship that they will go up. Life will change. They'll be on the track to be professional footballers. There should not be a half measure with promotion. Can you imagine being in the National League and getting promoted to the English Football League from the 5th division to the 4th division in England? One of the most celebrated promotions in the world of football. Right? Can you imagine achieving that promotion and then having your ownership say, that's what this is? Now, obviously, and honestly, thankfully for them, they didn't achieve it, because they wouldn't have been able to go anyways. And now that leaves the team in a particularly nasty situation, right? Because after what had been such a great day, brilliant atmosphere, good football, and a win for Wolves, it was devastating to hear the news break that the club didn't support the players. As the game grows, Wolves risk being left behind, and it will cost us more in the long run to play catch up. I mean, that is 100% true. The players said they felt lied to and a lack of respect, and they're not on professional contracts. So how many of them are going to stick around on this team that's clearly great, that's clearly better than basically every other team they're running into down here, that would clearly, if they can keep all of these players together, be a favorite for promotion next year? What's going to happen to the team now that they feel like they're not ever going to be able to get promoted? I'm going to want to go play for somebody else. I'm going to use this great season we just had to get a new contract somewhere else. That's what they're going to do, and that's what they should do. This is an effrontery to the promotion and relegation system. Either shit or get off the pot. You can't just sit there for an hour and scroll on your phone, and that's what Wolves is doing here.